A very warm good evening to all our viewers and welcome to the Evening Review Show. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Well, I know the festive season is upon us and all of us are looking forward to having a restful period. But before we say goodbye to 2023, of course, there are still a few national affairs that we need to tend to before we close off the year. One such aspect is, of course, the sudden and increased attention that has been focused on our judiciary. Of course, the past couple of months, you've seen a lot of happenings in that sector. Of course, you've had the issue of the New Era issue, where they had questioned the secrecy of the judiciary. Of course, and also just the issue of the appointment of judges, how that is done. We have we have in studio tonight the commissar for economic development from the Namibia Economic Freedom Fighters, Mr. Saddam Amushelelo. Good evening and welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Aufiku.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's quite an opportune time in having you on the set this evening for this topic. You've had your run-ins and dealings with the judiciary sector or the judicial sector over the years, and I'd like to know from you, what would you ascribe the sudden heightened interest in the affairs of the judiciary?
Man, I think for the past 20 odd years or so, most of us did not have an interest in what was happening in the judiciary branch because most of us have not had a run-in with the law, or we have not had so many profile cases. I mean, the last high-profile case that we had was the one of the Tekla Lamek Mokwakga, where the son of a Chinese president was also implicated in a fraud case that eventually led to an acquittal of those people. We also had the Evid case, and over the years we've started having a high number of cases. Now, as you start to have high profile cases, although obviously the media starts reporting about this particular cases, and when one starts reporting about this particular cases, the public obviously will start having an interest in what is being reported in these cases. Now, you then find issues where you find you don't know whether to call it there are blunders being made by the judiciary, or whether it's an oversight that's being made by the judiciary, or let's say judicial officers. And then wants to start to then question and say, but wait, why is this particular judgment being given as opposed to what this judgment is supposed to be? And with the increase in social media, it has now become easy for us to obviously share this information across various platforms, because we're now having discussions in our WhatsApp groups, because a lot of us are now able to converge. If you have 1,000 people in one group, or you have 5,000 people in a Telegram, and you are now discussing about the judiciary, obviously each and every single person starts contributing to their opinion to say, this is the opinion that I have of the judiciary, and this is the experience that I've had with the judiciary, and all of that. And there's an avid caller on the national radio platform. His name, I think, is Victor. And he was in prison for a rape case and things of that sort. And eventually, I don't know whether his matter was acquitted or something of that sort. And he's been one of the very few people who's been vocal to saying that somebody must be able to do judicial oversight, because in as much as these people are called your worship, your lordships, and all this fancy name that equate them to gods, they are human beings and they can make errors. And they have made an error in my judgment. And he went as far as saying that we now have a kangaroo justice system. And for all these years, he's been a lone voice, so to say, in this quest to say that somebody must look into the affairs of the judiciary. But because some of us had not had a run-in with the judiciary, we thought, you know what, it's fine. I don't have to care about these issues, because obviously I'm a good law-abiding citizen. I do everything by the book. So whoever gets appointed as judge, I do not really care, because I'm not going to have a run-in with the law. But that's a mistake that many of us are doing. Some of us, we've been law-abiding citizens, but for the mere fact that these judicial officers are appointed by the president and by a certain few group, the moment you start to attack the government that is currently sitting, then what typically happens is that the only way that usually they can silence you is either by killing you, which now becomes a bit difficult because of the technology and the surveillance that is around. So killing you is not the best option. So now what they usually do is they go for character assassination. Let's create as many charges against this particular individual. Let's arrest them. Let's put them in jail. Let's keep them in jail. Let's deny them their liberty and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what has now led to people having an interest in what is going on with our judicial system.
Yeah. But of course, someone could argue that if I have been a victim, I don't think victim is the right word, but if I had gone through the judicial system because of something I had allegedly done, of course I would find loopholes with the system. Is this an objective zoom into the system that we are doing?
I mean, so I would answer your question in two folds. And the first is to say that, firstly, we need to find out in terms of how have the current appointments of judges been. Now, there's a small judicial commission service which comprises of the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, and then I think the Attorney General and 2 lawyers, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this group simply decides or recommend to the president who it is that they think should become the next judge. Now, the president then appoints, based on the recommendation of the judicial service, who becomes the judge. Now, obviously, if I'm a sitting president, I would obviously want to get as many of my friends onto the judicial system or into the high courts and to the Supreme Courts. I would want to fill it with my friends. Why would I want to fill it with my friends? So that in the event that we are charged with allegations of corruption, we are charged with allegations of mismanagement of public funds and all these other things, we would have our places or would have our friends in these high places in order for them to either dismiss these cases or to somehow find a not guilty verdict by one way or another. Yeah. So that is the problem. Now, I think as a country, we have now matured in terms of our democracy to the point whereby we should say that why is it that we are vesting all these powers into one single individual, which is the president? Because firstly, the president appoints who becomes his police chief. And that already in itself speaks to the fact that if the police chief or the president don't like me, they can simply come and arrest me. Now, the second person that they appoint becomes the prosecutor general. Now, what is the duty and the functions of a prosecutor general? Is to prosecute matters that are brought before her. So if I say something today that's not in line with the government, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to arrest you. The second thing that they're going to do is they're going to bring charges against you, which is through the office of the prosecutor general. Now, the courts were now mandated to somehow become a place where people seek refuge. Because if you and I have an issue, where do we run to? We run to courts. Now, if the state has an issue with me, where do I run to? I have to run to the same courts. Now, if these courts now have already people who have been planted there to say that when we bring you this particular individual, we want you to deal with him, then that becomes already an issue. It's no longer, you no longer then have justice and you no longer have fairness in the judicial system. Because the whole purpose of having courts is in order for them to be able to judge matters objectively, fairly, and equally, and then be able to administer justice in a fair manner. But the moment you now have people who are put in position to serve their masters, then that becomes a bit complex in order for the administration of justice to correctly take place.
Well, as the public, when the public calls for judicial oversight, there's this perception that it should include things such as the public having a say as to how certain systems and processes should be executed. Should that really be the case? I mean, we have people who are appointed to run these institutions.
But that's the whole thing. You know, the whole thing about running a country, there should be checks and balances. Now, if there are no checks and balances in terms of how things are done, and you cannot then say you are doing things in the interest of the public, if these things you did them in secrecy. If appointments are done in secrecy, and then people come to courts, and then these courts are now saying no, we are remanding this person into custody because of the public interest. But where was the public in this whole process? So I think it would be fair enough that the public demands to say that we want transparency, we want accountability, and we want the system to be open in order for us to be able to see that are things being done procedurally. Because if for some or other reason we appoint people who are not competent, and remember, whatever happens in these courts, these are things that affect not only your life, but they affect the next person's life. Now, if we have incompetent people or people who are biased in terms of how they are going to deal with issues, because remember, in the court, you want someone who's going to be independent, meaning that they do not care whether it's the president who's brought before them, they do not care whether it's the child of a minister or the child of a peasant or the child of whatever.
Yeah.
They should be able to administer justice in a fair manner, irregardless of seeing, no, this person, I think they are white, they are black. No, it shouldn't be the case. It should be a thing of, we look at the merits of the case, then based on the merits of the case, judgments are then given based on that. But currently what we're seeing is, and I'm speaking from personal experience, this year you would all know that we were arrested for the unemployment protest that we had on the 21st of March. Now, first thing is first, one of the co-accused, Ina Hengare, Honorable Ina Hengare, a member of parliament, she was released without bringing a formal bail application. The state did not even object to say that we're going to oppose bail against her. And remember, we have been charged with the same charges and we are literally in the same case. And then she gets let go. Then my co-accused, Dimbulkeni Noyoma, brings an application, a formal bail application. And in that formal bail application, the magistrate concedes that the state does not have a prima facie case. Now, a prima facie case simply means that there is no sufficient evidence placed before court to even warrant the charges that we are being charged with. And he was granted bail. Now, I brought my application, and given the fact that at all material times on the 21st of March, I was with Dimbulkeni Noyoma. We were both arrested in a vehicle headed to his mother's house in order for us to go celebrate our independence that we apparently have won. And my application was refused. Then we said, wait, perhaps the magistrate did not apply her mind. Let's take this matter to the High Court, because High Courts are always more matured and they are not usually politically affiliated, and we thought that would then be able to win the case. So I appeared before Judge Naomi Shuvute, who's the wife of the Chief Justice, and bear in mind, she had recused herself in another matter that had appeared before her, but she never told us why she was recusing herself. But she saw it fit that it's now an opportune time for her to oversee a bail application that I'm bringing before her. So already there you can already see that she's conflicted. In another matter that I've brought before you, you said that you could not hear it because you had conflict of interest. But now I'm bringing you another matter, and now you're not saying recusing yourself because you have one or other motive or so forth.
Let me just interject there so we can head for a short break.
Okay.
And I'll allow you to continue when we come back. But to our viewers, we head for a short commercial break, and we'll be back to continue the conversation. Well, welcome back from this short break. Mr. Amushelelo, just to continue where, before I had interjected, you were speaking of how a judge had recused herself for a certain matter and came back to hear another matter. What if the judge hypothetically argues that I had recused myself simply because of the nature of the matter I was dealing with, and not necessarily because of the accused person.
But that's the whole problem with court proceedings in our current judicial system. When a judge recuses themselves, they should be able to say what are the reasons that they're recusing themselves.
Yeah.
But judges, because they are called your lordships and your worship, they do not think it's necessary to be able to explain why it is that they're recusing themselves, or why is it that they deem fit that they should not be able to hear such these matters. Now, one can just speculate. I was one of the activists who went to go demonstrate in front of Chief Justice's house in 2020, when we were demanding that there must be a process where public interviews are held for these positions. And that time it was the position of the Prosecutor General, where we had said, no, with this Prosecutor General, number one, she's past her retirement age, and all of these things were in question. But still, as we all know, she's still currently the serving Prosecutor General. But back to the issue that is at hand. So the judge failed to recuse herself, and then she listened to this bail hearing with another judge called Christian Philander. I saw her in today's newspapers. She's also one of the candidates who's applying to become a High Court judge. And I'll say now why she's not a good candidate to be an admitted judge of the High Court in Namibia. Now, we literally presented the facts in terms of what happened at the magistrate court, and that the High Court should be able to find reasonable grounds in terms of why I should be released on bail. Because to start off with, there was no evidence. Now, the only reason why you'd keep an accused person in prison is because you perhaps have a strong case that would obviously, at the end of the day, lead to a conviction. That's the purpose of keeping accused persons in prison. To say that here we have a solid case, we are scared that this person is a flight risk, and that in the event that we do give them bail, they are most probably going to abscond from court and all of that. Now, I should state it on record that I have multiple cases that I'm facing in multiple jurisdictions in this country. And never once have I fled from any of those cases. In fact, we had provided them sufficient evidence to say that this person is out on bail on this particular case. They still attend to court. They are out on bail on this one. They still go to court. But that was not the issue at hand. The issue that was at hand to say that there is no evidence in this particular case, so there is no reason why this person should be in jail. What did the High Court say? The High Court simply dismissed my matter and said that what the magistrate had applied was correct. Now, I was then in prison for over 7 months, and then eventually just to be acquitted. A magistrate court found that I was not guilty of the alleged crimes that I had committed. Now, this is the problem then that we start seeing in our judicial system, because the reason why you have a lower court, higher courts, and the Supreme Court is so that when the lower court does a mistake, it is for the higher court to correct the mistake of the lower court. But if the High Court starts to also put a stamp of approval on what is done on the lower courts, then we are setting a bad precedence for our judicial system. That simply means that if I now want to appeal in a matter because I was wrongfully found guilty in the magistrate of Karibeb or in the magistrate of Ocho, and remember, all matters are appealed just in the High Court, which is based in Windhoek or Shakati. So that simply means that the High Court is going to say, no, what that magistrate said, we are still going to abide by it, in as much as the magistrate's decision was wrong. So the checks and balances are no longer there. But you can now clearly start to see that this thing only happens in a few politically motivated cases. And in my case was highly politically motivated. We all know that since last year, December, when Joseph Shikongo was arrested, I've been at the forefront of calling for the demand of him to be arrested. And that is why on the 21st of March, I was arrested unlawfully. In fact, that you can literally say it was an arbitrary arrest. It was, they kidnapped me. Let me just put it that way in simple terms.
So over the years, we've not had an incident of maybe a judge being maybe fired for misconduct or for any other offenses. We've not had some of those cases. If there were, it's probably disciplinary measures that were dealt with internally. So it makes one wonders, why is there this sudden element of doubt on the system, which has seen to be working flawlessly over the years?
You know, it's been working flawlessly over the years because no one put a spotlight on it. Now, if no one knows that you're doing something wrong, then people will perceive you to be doing everything right. But the moment now we start putting a spotlight and we start doing a bit of investigations into cases you have dealt with. And remember, only now we have gotten an e-justice system whereby you are able to access judgments electronically. Before that, the only way you could access judgments is literally going to a physical court and then asking for that particular judgment.
But isn't that part of the transparency that the public is calling for, that the judiciary has now implemented?
No. That's part of it. But remember, just because you have done that small part, there's still a lot that needs to be done. So that's just a part of it. So that's maybe like 2% of the 100% that we're demanding for. So just because you have done 2% doesn't mean now we must forget the 98%. So what we're looking for is 100% transparency in the system. Now, back to your question in terms of why the sudden need for us to see whether the judicial system is being done properly. Remember, all these years, we did not care perhaps as a nation what happens in the courts and what happens in judgments and things of that nature. But little did we not know that these things have an impact. Now, you would remember and you would know for a fact that this year, the Supreme Court gave the LBGT ruling, where they directed the Ministry of Home Affairs to say that they must now allow same-sex coupled married abroad to get marriage certificates. Now, when that happens, and people now see that, oh, so the courts have this type of power, where they can literally direct a government to say that you must now legalize homosexuality or whatever the case is. Then people obviously will have an interest to say that, who are these people who are placed in these positions, who have this power to dictate over us to say that we must now accept that men and men can marry each other or women and women can marry each other. So obviously people are going to want to say, no. Because you now have moral questions that are being raised as a result of these judgments. And as a society, we have an obligation to then start questioning who are these people appointed that have this type of power that they can literally make judgments, and these judgments start to affect our lives. Because now I must explain to my child why two men are kissing each other. Now I must explain to my child why two women are married. These are things that some of us now cannot explain to our children. And as a result of that, we now start to question the judicial system, because all these years, the judiciary was never questioned. It was never attacked. It was never criticized. It was a thing of, you know what, these people, there must be a reason why we call them your lordship. There must be a reason why we call them your worship. It's because they are gods. But now we have realized that these gods can make mistakes. They've made a mistake in the case of legalizing homosexuality. They've made a mistake in denying me bail, and they've made several other mistakes in many other cases. So that's why we need to be able to criticize them, and make sure that with our criticism, we are now saying we want A to be implemented, we want B to be implemented, so that we can see that the process is done transparently. Because now what we're seeing is that in the judicial system, this is where we have people who have been planted to either destroy our society or to either fight battles which are supposed to be in the political realm. Now the judicial system is also being used for political battles. And that is absolutely wrong in a democratic society. Because if we're saying that the courts can now be non-political or apolitical, that simply means that we must then just declare this country as a dictatorship. Because what's the purpose of the courts? The purpose of the courts is to make sure that each and everyone's rights are defended. But now if some of our rights are being alienated, then that simply means that there's no longer a system that we can go to and say that, please protect my rights. Because that's the whole purpose of the courts. The courts are there to protect our constitutional and fundamental rights. And I must come back Because on the 21st of March, we had gone to court where we had challenged the decision of the Inspector General where he refused us to protest on the 21st of March. Now, nowhere in the law does it say that you can only protest on a particular day or you can only protest on a particular month or whatsoever. Our constitution already gives us the fundamental rights to say that you may protest. Just make sure that you do not have arms, you are peaceful and all of that. So we went to challenge that decision, but the court, instead of entertaining that, they simply said that, sorry, your matter is not urgent. But how can you say that our matter is not urgent when it is on the 21st of March at 3 o'clock in the morning and we want to go demonstrate at 8 o'clock and now you are telling us that our matter is not urgent. So you can clearly see, even from that decision, the courts are being directed by the politicians in terms of what decisions to make. Because the court should have had our case. We should have been granted an interim relief in order for us to protest on the 21st of March, because there is no law that prohibits us from demonstrating on the 21st of March, on the 26th of August, or any other day that we so fit.
Yeah. Just as we wrap up this conversation, as much as I agree with you that cause should be apolitical, it's very difficult for courts not to have an impact on other layers or branches of government. And also, especially the political sphere that you are referring to, which in this case specifically the legislature, because if there are political misunderstandings and so on, you run to the courts. Why do you then run to the courts?
Precisely.
That by implication, the court is already involved in the political arena. But as you said, people go there for recourse. So, what is the best way forward? How should we best manage this process to ensure that, of course, judgment is like a coin. The outcome of the judgment is good for one side and bad for the other side. So how do we manage this process to ensure that regardless of a specific outcome of a specific process, we can still hold up our heads and say our system is functioning?
Man, I think what we will need to do is we will need to have a total reform in terms of changing our constitution, in terms of how appointments of judges are done. I think that the prerogative of giving the power of important institutions such as courts to the prerogative of the president and just a few judicial service commission, that's absolutely wrong. I think that civil society should be able to have a say. I think that the public should be able to have a say. The fourth estate, which is the media, should also be able to have a say. And then we should also then be able to bring in the legislator to say that, come in, let's have a whole process of all these independent bodies, and then we interview, or we have then the criteria to select who our judges are. And then based off of that, that's then when we can say that we now have the most competent people in our judicial system, and then we now know that our values in terms of what we have subscribed to, liberty, justice, and freedom, would be upheld. Right now in this country, I would say that there is no liberty, because there are thousands of people languishing in prisons and they are just being denied bail. Now, what's funny enough in this country, it's like they first look at who you are. You know, the Atchison case, which Judge Justice Mohammed had laid down when August Anton Lobosky was murdered, made it very clear in terms of what are the criteria set out in order for you to deny someone bail. But now we have moved away from that, and we are now simply using the mere fact that there's public pressure or there's this sort of things. When it comes to court, there was public pressure then when Judge Mohammed gave that thing. Because remember, Anton Lobosky was a stalwart a freedom fighter, and obviously he was one of the most vocal people against the apartheid system. Now, you can just imagine at that time that there was a public outcry to say that this person who's been accused of his assassination must remain in prison. But that person, due to the fact that the law is the law and it is clear, we granted that murderer of Anton Lobosky bail. And guess what? He fled because he was Irish. Now, ordinary Namibians are not granted bail, but we give the likes of Jack Wang, who's implicated in a $3.5 billion fraud case or tax evasion. So I sometimes find it funny. We're saying that the Fish Road is the biggest corruption scandal in the country. But as far as I'm concerned with the figures you guys speak about, it's 300 million, sometimes it's 150 million. Sometimes I'm confused what's the exact amount. But here we have Jack Wang and his co-accused who have stolen an assumable 3.5 billion in taxes, but he's still out on bail.
Yeah.
In fact, he went to go commit the same crime in Angola, was arrested in Angola, released in Angola, and he's still doing whatever it is that he wishes to do. So we must be able to say that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Okay.
And that is basically the principles that we need to apply. Because today you deny me bail, tomorrow, I don't know who it is that's going to be denied bail, on a matter perhaps where they are innocent, as I found myself to have been proven innocent, but the damage that that does to my family, to the society that I belong to, it's an irreparable damage.
Yeah.
So we must be able to at all times dispensate justice in a fair and equitable manner. And that's all that we're saying. To say that whether this person belongs to this political spectrum or whether they belong to that religious spectrum or whatever it is, we must be able at all times to ensure that justice is upheld.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Amushelelo, thank you very much for your time this evening. And have a good and restful festive season, hopefully.
And unfortunately, the work that we do does not allow us to rest. So injustice everywhere at all times must be fought. So we'll continue being on that front.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
Well, to our viewers, that's it from the Evening Review team. Have a pleasant evening.